What was all that? That was disturbing. All right, so is this the pre-ramble?
Yeah, sure. If you want it to be.
So first of all, see the pre-ramble, there's a sort of, I often feel a little bit like kind of a psych ward patient in the sense that the pre-ramble is predicated on what could be a hallucination on my part. And that is that there's anybody watching who's not actually employed by the company that makes the show. So maybe nobody is right now. But if anybody is and would like to participate in the next time we do this show, a new idea, an innovation, what I want to do is I want somebody who's like on the comment threads of YouTube, not this time, but next time, just give me a prompt. Say one word. Say like, just type Bobcat. And then I have to talk about Bobcats for 4 minutes. But we're not going to do that this week. But just think it over if you exist at all. If I am talking to a person who exists. You see, there is a psych ward feeling here. I will say a little bit about one of my favorite topics, IEMs. That's idiotic eureka moments, Frank Skinner coinage. And IEM is when you figure out something that everybody else already knows. Or it can be expanded, and I'll explain in a second why. So my big IEM, classical IEM of last year was I realized that mittens are warmer than gloves. And, you know, to be 70 years old and be figuring that out is bad. But, like, there's a guy that I walk with now who's younger than me, and I don't think he's quite there yet. Like, his hands are cold, and we had the same kind of gloves that we got at Costco by the company, made by Head. But he's been sort of saying, well, now it's getting too cold, and I'm going mittens. And he's kind of like, yeah, mittens, really? And I'm kind of like, mittens. The thing is, like, he's in his 40s. He could have 25 years that I never had. He could have 25 mitten years. That's what I'm offering him. But I don't think he's quite there with the mittens things yet. But so my other IEM, it's a little bit different. My other IEM, and I was thinking about this because we have a tradition in our family that on your birthday, you get asked, what did you learn this past year? And inevitably, I go blank. I just feel like I've learned nothing. I think I've actually learned I learn a lot every year, but I can never think of anything. And this is a very literally pedestrian answer, but my other big IEM this year was apparently I've been wearing the wrong size shoes, like by a full size, for a really long time. And the person who told me was this woman at a shoe store. At Footprints, if you want to be specific. And I think she has a little tiny bit of an accent, and it's either Russian or Polish, but I can't tell which. I think I'm going to go with Russian because one of the ways that she, you know, like, I think some people would try to soften the blow, but Russian people tend not to do that. They just tell you that you've been wearing the wrong size shoes. Like, and it's like, I mean, I've been wearing size 9 shoes and I'm a 10. I'm a size 10. It's not a small difference. And it's weird because, like, my shoes really were kind of uncomfortable for a while. I was kind of thinking, I don't know. It's like another pair of uncomfortable shoes that I bought. It didn't really sink in with me. I know what you're playing right now. The things we do for love. But it didn't really sink in with me that I could possibly be. And so what this woman said, she goes, people get attached to a number, you know, like my number is 9, you know, except it's not, it's 10. And now I feel like I sort of want to buy shoes every week because, like, I can get shoes that fit me for the first time in years. So I become like the Imelda Marcos of boring ass middle, you know, old man shoes. If Imelda Marcos was a 71-year-old white man, I would be her, or she would be me, or something. See, I told you there's a psych ward feeling here. Anyway, that's the pre-ramble. I don't know, what is your IEM? You know, do you ever have that thing where somebody tells you something that everybody else has already known? Mittens are warmer than gloves. Or somebody tells you something that you really should have known. What size shoe you wear. And I find it kind of liberating. I wasn't chagrined. Wasn't a painful experience. I'm really happy to know what size my feet are. And so I can have all these nice shoes. I used to not be able to have nice shoes because they were the wrong size. That's why I didn't have nice shoes, because I kept buying the wrong size. All right, I'll stop now. We're going to do an actual show here pretty soon. I already have one caller, so there. Oh, I'm ready to talk about that. Actually, someone has called up about something that I have insights into. All right, good.
Like walking in the rain and the snow when there's nowhere to go, when you're feeling like a part of you is dying and you're looking for the answer in her eyes. You think you're gonna break up, then she says she wants to make up.
Look what you done to me. I'm utterly at your whim. All of my defenses down. Your camera looks through me with its X-ray vision. All systems run aground. All I can manage to push from my lips is a stream of absurdity. Every word I intended to speak winds up locked in a circuitry. They tell me no way to control it. It's totally automatic whenever you're around. I'm walking blindfolded, completely automatic. All of my systems are down, 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 down.
So, welcome to Ask Her Tell Me Anything. You know, we very carefully curate the music for Ask Her Tell Me Anything. Well, I say very carefully, by which I mean we can do anything we want. So, and we don't have to make it fit, you know, a topic like nuns or something. Anyway, so the theme today is recent, and by recent I mean calendar 2025, covers of older songs that in one way or another are pleasing to us. Some of them are kind of interesting and some of them are just fun. Anyway, that's an old Pointer Sisters song, and that's a jazz cover of it. Anyway, so you'll hear a lot of that. I'm not going to explain them all to you. They're supposed to be kind of background music. We tend to foreground our background music. Anyway, welcome to Ask Her Tell Me Anything. The number is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. And you can, you know, the title is self-explanatory. I would think you can ask or tell me anything. Here we go. We're going to start with Lake Como Dave from beautiful Lake Como, Ohio. Hi, Lake Como Dave.
Greetings, Colin. I was, here's a great show topic, by the way. This is not my calling topic, but what you were playing in the off air, which is The Things We Do for Love.
Yeah.
That song, a fascinating but very difficult to execute show would be songs we remember as being faster or maybe slower. I mean, that song for me always seems much slower than in my memory. But
well, we're going to, later in the show, we're going to play the Bird and the Bee cover of The Things We Do for Love, and that will further confuse you about tempo.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm plenty confused, but
Yeah.
including about this, the whole Paramount hostile bid for Warner Brothers. You know, we heard a few days ago that Netflix is making a big, $82 billion bid for Warner's, and was really going to shake things up. And what's that going to do to movie theaters and all that? But then suddenly, predictably, Trump's own Paramount network is going to try to acquire Warner's instead. So this, of course, creates the nightmare scenario of like Emperor Palpatine one fine day just saying execute Order 66, and then I don't know whether it would mean a bunch of George Clooney movies and all the other stuff that Trump hates would just disappear from what's available for streaming, or whether edited versions of those items would, and a bunch of other stuff. You'd never have the original version of any film again.
We'll just back up here for a second and say this deal in which Netflix is posed to acquire Warner HBO, in which both of their boards have approved, is still regarded somehow as not ironclad. I will say that it's a lot of money. I mean, not just the sum that you just quoted, but if you look at what the stock price has done, what the offer has done to the stock price, and what effectively Netflix would be paying per share, it's really high. So the idea that Paramount Skydance necessarily wants to try to beat that offer, which I think even with some kind of Trump intervention, they would still have to do. I think that the idea that, I mean, I'm not saying anything can happen. Obviously, that's the world we live in these days. Anything can happen. The old rules don't apply. I have no idea whether the Netflix Warner Brothers deal is going to go through or not. I have no idea whether Trump is going to be able. I mean, one thing that seems to be happening a little bit is Trump is having a little bit more trouble getting his agencies to do exactly what he wants. Sometimes because judges just say, well, you can't. And not only that, that's not even a real prosecutor. So you can't prosecute somebody if you don't have a real prosecutor. Just crazy stuff like that. So, it's not axiomatic to me that he can just get an agency involved right now to tank that deal. And the basis on which he would tank that deal would get tanked is also not clear to me. But, and I also don't think that ultimately Paramount Skydance would want to. I don't know how serious you were about what you were saying, but ultimately you make money in that kind of business by producing content for everybody, or not for everybody, but for a mass audience. So some kind of Orwellian version, like highly edited version.
I was merely doing the science fiction version, the most lurid, The other thing about this is that, of all the things that, let's just say for argument's sake that, Trump has finally gone from the scene and the Democrats have control of, most or all of the government, and then you start working to repair the damage. This has the possibility, if he manages to take over all the major streaming services and so forth, to be the hardest to undo. And what would be probably needed would be an era of trust busting to make TRs look like, a small thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way.
Lasting damage.
Yeah, I mean, lasting damage for sure. I think it's. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think it's sort of suggesting an inelastic set of reactions. And by that I mean, humanity kind of adapts pretty quickly to things. So one of the things that you're seeing right now, I think, is a pretty massive, you might call it the substackization. I can't even make a noun out of it. Substackization of media that. And none of this is my own original idea. So first of all, let me just back up and say, there's this 1,000 true fans idea, which is the idea. I think a guy named Kevin King came up with it, but it's sort of based on the long tail concept that, for example, there was a host at this radio station who shall remain nameless. This host is no longer with us. Who, if you mention this host's show to a whole bunch of people, you could find 5 people who hated the show sooner than you found the one person who loved the show. But the person who loved the show really, really loved the show. And that was able to, that was enough, because if you have 750 people who want to get on a bus and go to New York and try some Chinese food or something, now I'm kind of giving away who this was, but, that's a real thing. That's a real asset. And I do think that, I'll guess, because I have no other call, so I can go a little bit longer on this.
Yeah,
the example that I always give is, this is also not my original idea, but years and years and years and years and years ago, John Hodgman had not become John Hodgman yet, and he was literally the receptionist at a literary agency. And he was a big fan of the actor Bruce Campbell. And who's either in the Evil Dead movies or something like the Evil Dead movies. So he, pretending to be a literary agent, wrote to Bruce Campbell and said, I'm a big fan. You should write a book. And if you wrote a book, I would be your agent, omitting that he was the receptionist. So Bruce, all of this comes to pass. All comes to pass. Bruce Campbell does write a book. And meanwhile, at the same time, a woman who I believe was named Brett Butler, which is a little confusing because I think there was a Cleveland Indians outfielder also by that name. But this woman,
in the 80s.
Yeah, this woman, she She had a show like a sitcom called Grace Under Pressure or something like that.
Yes. Yep.
She wrote a book, and she she got a ton. She like Bruce Campbell got like $7,500 or something. I mean, Bruce Campbell got Colin McEnroe money for his book, but she got some. Add a few zeros on. And then his book outperformed her. And now, why was that? It was because Bruce Campbell's like, Patti Smith. People who love Patti Smith, they'll drive 250 miles, to be with Patti Smith, without even thinking about it. And similarly, the people who love Bruce Campbell will drive, through a snowstorm in Indiana to a book signing or something, So, I mean, everybody who loved Bruce Campbell loved him enough to buy his book and wound up outperforming Brett Butler's book because Brett Butler was just kind of on television, a lot of things are, television. Yeah, she's on television, which it sounds really good. You're on a network sitcom, particularly back in those days. But the truth is, nobody has any real allegiance to that. And I think that has become truer. I think the long tail model, has become an even more intense thing. And that if you like something, you like it a lot. And then everything else is just kind of a hum or a buzz. I mean, yeah, I'm really sorry about what happened to 60 Minutes. But frankly, I haven't watched 60 Minutes that much for years and years and years. It's just
Not
kind of
since
there.
Morley Safer passed away.
Yeah.
That was about the dividing line.
So, I do think that, I mean, obviously, someday with Saruman and Sauron gone, we're going to have to figure out what shape the Shire is in. But, while that's happening, people are making all kinds of adjustments. And the delivery models were changing anyway. Podcasts were getting more and more popular. You can start a podcast, pretty easily. And if you've got 5,000 people listening to it, that's really good. You're doing really
And
well.
low overhead, yeah.
And Substack, same kind of thing. So I think the thing that got us in a lot of trouble is also the thing that might help us get out. And the thing that's got us in a lot of trouble was this kind of micro audience phenomenon meant that you could say a lot of stuff that wasn't true and it would kind of fly under the radar. And so pretty soon you've got a lot of people believing that, vaccines turn your hair gray or something or whatever the latest, crazy thing is. And it hasn't even really been vetted. There's no way to knock it down. We don't even know exactly how people are hearing about this.
Right.
Although I will say, and I've said this before, that, back when Rush Limbaugh had 17 million listeners, he would go on the air every day and say stuff that wasn't true, and nobody did anything about it. Like the New York Times didn't even report, hey, 17 million people think that the Clintons killed their lawyer, because Rush Limbaugh told them so. So I don't know. I mean, somehow or other, we will adapt, but I don't know.
Yeah, and there's also no way to really predict like the suddenness with which the reaction against something that had seemed so popular just erupts, and then like, whoa, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, actions beget reactions, and so yeah. So I don't know if Trump is going to successfully interfere in the deal, and B, if he did interfere, the Ellisons are going to have to come up with a lot of freaking money. This is not going to be
for them, but
maybe not a problem. But like nobody who gets to be Larry Ellison. I mean, I think Netflix is really prepared to pay more for Warner HBO than really makes sense. Like, it's not like you're buying a car. It's more like they're buying a position. And it's so that it's not necessarily the value of the hardware and the catalog and all that kind of stuff is at a level that would warrant what they're paying. They're paying in order to secure an even greater share of the market. They're paying to have fewer competitors. That's what they're paying for. It's like if you paid 5 times what your car is worth because you didn't want 4 other people to have cars. That may be a pretty. Mr. Carp is going to explain to me what a bad analogy that was when he finds me, but it's kind of like that. It's you're not really paying for the thing; you're paying for the market position that the thing will give you. So the Ellisons are going to have to decide they want that. Netflix has decided we want that, we need that. Now, I have a whole bunch of other aesthetic questions about this that are probably pretty similar to yours, Dave. But and I may bring them up in a second. But thanks for your call, and thanks to Lake. So Lake Como, Dave is the first call of the day. We have open lines right here, and you're kind of busy right now. It's Christmas season or something like that. You're out shopping. But please call 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. It's interesting that he brought that up with the first call. And by the way, you can call up about anything. You can call up about Christmas cookies. Christmas cookies, by the way, kind of overrated, right? It's just like a dough, and then you squirt stuff on it, and then put some sparkles on it, and then you eat it because you've always eaten Christmas cookies. They're like a thing. But are they really any good? Are they like even a good cookie? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that at all. It's the decorating of them and stuff, I think, that probably is their appeal. Anyway, that isn't what I wanted to talk about. Once again, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. So this weekend, I had two linked movie viewing experiences. And the first one was that I watched Jay Kelly, which is the new George Clooney, Dave mentioned George Clooney, vehicle on Netflix, directed by Noah Baumbach. And, with Adam Sandler. By the way, I think we now have to stop saying, wow, Adam Sandler can really do serious acting. That's Punch Drunk Love and Spanglish and then every Uncut Gems and just keep going and Meyerowitz Chronicles. And okay, we know that. That's not a revelation anymore. We get it. He can act. Anyway, he's in it, and Emily Mortimer and Laura Dern and Jim Broadbent. And just a real fancy, nice, cool cast. Stacy Keach is in it. And it's about kind of a movie star coming to the twilight of his time and then realizing that he has not necessarily taken care of the important relationships in his life, like his daughters. This doesn't really strike me as a particularly novel theme. In some ways, there's a fundamental American story, and that is, it's like Charles Foster Kane or Jay Gatsby, or it's a story we tell over and over again. You reach the pinnacle. You reach the very pinnacle that you've been striving for all this time. And then you realize that one thing about the pinnacle is there's only room for one person to stand there. And so there you are all by yourself. And you've left all kinds of other people behind. They're still clinging to, to steps elsewhere on the way up to the pinnacle. So it's like one of those movies. But it's good. And it's Noah Baumbach, and it's good, And then I went to see Sentimental Value, which is by the Norwegian director Johan Trier, I think is his full name. The person who did The Worst Person in the World. So this is a Norwegian film that also happens to co-star Stellan Skarsgård. I can't even say his name. Stellan Skarsgård, the great Swedish actor. So 1% Swedish content. We got our 1% Swedish content in right there. And I was watching it on a screen, at Real Artways in Hartford. And I was realizing, and it's also actually about people in the movie business and in the entertainment business. And Stellan Skarsgård plays this Swedish director who's become very popular in Norway or something. Anyway, and one of his daughters is an actor. Both of his daughters have kind of been actors at one point or another. And I was thinking that it just had a bigger reach to it than Jay Kelly did. There was nothing wrong with Jay Kelly. It's actually kind of an entertaining movie with good performances and people that you want to see and stuff. You want to see Emily Mortimer be a hairdresser or something. But it's sort of a B-plus movie. And one of my concerns about this whole era of mergers and this whole era, because the fear, and Dave alluded to this, the fear is that Netflix doesn't really care at all about theatrical releases, doesn't really care at all about people going to movie theaters. And there's actually a moment in Sentimental Value where this is alluded to, where Stellan Skarsgård's character is giving an interview about the movie he's working on, and he's working on it for Netflix. It's going to be a Netflix release. And the reporter says, well, it'll be released to theaters first, right? And Skarsgård says, oh, absolutely, because that is the way people should see movies, yada, yada. He doesn't say yada, yada. He says the Swedish or Norwegian version of yada, yada. So anyway, he says that. And then his manager or whoever that guy is who's kind of standing behind him goes, well, this is still being talked out or something. And you realize, oh, he doesn't have an ironclad guarantee that he'll get a theatrical release. And I think all of this is kind of tied together in a really interesting way. One of them is, I think when you make stuff Like when Netflix makes a movie like Jay Kelly that they're going to release onto their own platform, and they'll release it to selected theaters long enough so that it can early enough and long enough so that it can qualify for the major awards. You know, but it's basically going to be consumed by people at home. I sort of feel like the aspiration goes down a little bit, you know, that making a B+ movie, that's pretty good, you know, because like in Netflix, you put so little effort into getting the movie, right? You turn on your television and you push a couple of buttons and you're watching something. So it's not like you feel like, oh, like I drove all the way over to this place, you know, and I parked my car and it was cold and then I had to get a ticket. And, you know, I mean, your expectations ratchet up because you put more effort into being an audience. Whereas, in fact, being an audience has become incredibly easy. Too easy, one might say. So then you watch Jay Kelly and you think, well, that's pretty good. And George Clooney's good. And Adam Sandler's, hey, he can really act. No, I heard somebody on the radio say we're not supposed to say that anymore. And so you think, okay, that's fine. We watched the movie. It was good. It was good. It is good. It's a good movie. I don't want to suggest it isn't. But then we think, okay, let's go to bed. And that's it. Whereas, you know, my experience the next day, that was Saturday night, following day, drive to the 1:30 showing of Sentimental Value, you know, and then sit down there and watch it and kind of be among other people and, you know, buy a ticket from someone beforehand. And so my level of engagement is way higher. And I think also the bar aesthetically is set a little higher as well. So I just worry about that. I think what's going to happen is that these big players are going to get bigger and more bloated. But it's also going to mean that there'll be, once again, we're back to that kind of substackization rule. The smaller players will probably have more room to operate. Real Artways is going to close pretty soon and reopen with more screens. They're going to expand their ability to show movies. And I think they're doing that with the anticipation there will be lots of interesting independent movies to see that will be interesting to see on screens with other people. Because the other part of that is, of course, that sometimes you go with, you know, another couple or something and see a movie and talk about it afterwards. Or you run into somebody out there in the gallery space of Real Artways or wherever you are, and you have a conversation about this movie you've just seen. I think there is going to be a hunger for all that, and I think that smaller operators in terms of distribution and in terms of producing movies, they're going to tap into that, and you will see that kind of 1,000 true fans principle. Now, 1,000 is the wrong number for a movie. You need a lot more fans to have a movie be successful. But you can, with a small ardent fan base and a small is beautiful kind of strategy, you can be successful. All right, so we're going to take a little break right now. The number, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. We'll talk to you on the other side.
What I was made for, what was I made for? Think I forgot how to be happy. Something I'm not, something I can't be, something I wait for, something I'm made for, something I'm made for.
Support comes from Paul Winter Consort, presenting their winter solstice celebration at Yale's Woolsey Hall in New Haven on December 19th at 7 p.m., featuring vocalist Teresa Thomason and Tim Brumfeld on the Woolsey pipe organ. More at solsticeconcert.com.
Sean, there are so many daily news shows out there.
I know, sometimes they all sound kind of samey.
And that's why we work hard every day to sound different.
Don't believe us? Give it a listen.
Today Explained from Vox, hosted by me, Noel King.
And me, Sean Rameswaram. Join us.
This afternoon at 3:30.
Scientists have discovered millions of new species on Earth since the 1700s, and we are averaging 17,000 more every year. But how many more are there?
The range of estimates of how many species are out there are from the low millions to the low trillions.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. The mission to better understand life on our own planet, on All Things Considered, from NPR News.
Listen this afternoon at 4. Support comes from the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. Support comes from Springfield Museums, featuring the Grinch's Grotto, now through January 11th. Meet the Grinch and pose for festive photos in a new large-scale Whoville experience. SpringfieldMuseums.org/holiday.
Too many broken hearts have fallen in the river. Too many lonely souls have drifted out to sea. You lay your bets and then you pay the price. The things we do for love. Communication is the problem to the answer. You've got her number and your hand is on the phone. The weather's turned and all the lines are down. The things we do for love. The things we do for love. Like walking in the rain and the snow when there's nowhere to go. And you're feeling like a part of you is dying. And you're looking for the answer in her eyes. You think you're gonna break up, and she says she wants to make up.
Once again, it's an all-cover Monday. It turns out the maestro doesn't necessarily relish this concept. But here's the thing about covers. Petra, hang on. I'm going to get to you in 2 seconds. Here's the thing about cover versions. Sometimes the cover version can really help. One of the cover versions we're not using today is a jazz version led by the singer Lauren Henderson of the song Landslide. And the reason that I think it's really important is that, so Landslide is the Fleetwood Mac song. But I always hated that song. But the reason I hated the song is that I hated the whole Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham period of Fleetwood Mac, having enjoyed the band a lot in previous iterations. So I just kind of, on principle, hated everything that they did. But listening to this jazz version of Landslide, you realize it's actually a pretty good song. You know, it was probably even a good song when they were doing it. I was just so angry at them that I couldn't see through all that. And so that's one of the things that a good cover can do. It can make you see. I mean, the most extreme version from 2025 was the jazz singer Nicole Zaritis doing Brand New Key by Melody. One of the most annoying recordings. It was released as a single. It was just unbelievably, and I think kind of intentionally annoying. And then Nicole does this version, and it's great, you know, and you think, can this song actually not be annoying? It can be done in a not annoying. It just seems so fundamentally and intrinsically annoying that it didn't seem like it had any other possibilities. All right. Anyway, enough. Our number, if you want to call in, and it might be one of those days where not too many people call in which case I'll start crying and talking about my childhood. 888-720-9677. I might do that anyway. 888-720-WNPR. But we're lucky to have with us Petra, who is going to build on the earlier conversation. Hi, Petra.
Hi. We're at a really odd cultural impasse. I hope I can keep things straight here. You'll help me. But between great success, it's like we're at this tremendous democracy really did succeed with Twitter. I got on it later, and it was the public square. And then it got over-moderated, according to some people. I never felt that way, but some people said it got over-moderated. But now it's not the public square anymore because Elon Musk bought it to free it up for politically incorrect talk, and now it's full of bots and trolls and AI, and it's clogged with hatred. And all the people I used to talk to on it and meet are not there anymore. And I still go on to yell at people, but it's hopeless. And we're in the great golden age of TV. I saw Jay Kelly too a couple of days ago on TV, and that I think the problem with Jay Kelly is that it was just a movie. What we need on TV now, what we need on Netflix is a miniseries. You got to have eight episodes. You got to have 6 episodes. And that's the only way you're going to get over the difficulty of making novels into movies. There are all these great novels made into movies for 100 years, and none of them really worked because you can't get a novel into even a 4-hour movie. But you can really get a novel into an 8-part or 10-part miniseries. You can do it complete justice. And so we're in the golden age of television because there's a lot of incredibly high quality stuff, especially if you're willing, as I am, to read subtitles and that sort of thing. I mean, and the movie theater, I have an example of this from last year. I went to the North Haven movie theater last time. I went to one to see Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. And Megalopolis, I had great hope for.
You were the one who went and saw it. This is exciting.
And there were only a few people there. It's true. But, the fact is, I went there, and because I was in that North Haven place with huge, cushy seats, tilting back at the slightest movement of your body, I fell asleep. And therefore, I didn't really watch Megalopolis.
Yeah,
and
it might have been meant to be.
I liked what I saw of it, but I would have really liked to see it again.
Yeah.
When I went to see it again for my home, I found that legally it can no longer be acquired. Amazon Prime had it, but they can't show it. You can't get it. And so I couldn't get it in a place where I could actually stay awake and watch it.
I'll sell you a bootleg copy of Megalopolis for $1,700.
Yeah, there you go. And the same problem, I was just chosen to be on the Economic Development Commission of my town.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have my first meeting with that town tomorrow. And I am very concerned because my position is that Connecticut housing, something similar has happened with housing. I bought a house 40 years ago. Well, not 40, 32 years ago, 1993. And it piddled around at a value of about $150,000, got up to maybe $225,000 over the next 20 years. All of a sudden, with COVID, 2022, houses around me are going for the same size house around me is going for $500,000.
Yeah.
And this has happened all over Connecticut, but especially in my immediate New Haven area. But this is a tremendous source of revenue, I think, potentially for these towns, which are suffering with difficulties raising revenue. Nobody wants to put manufacturing in. Malls and huge retail are not big anymore. So where are you going to get your tax money from?
But part of the problem there is, of course, that economic development gets slowed down when people can't find a place to live because you can't hire anybody new. So you want to start a company in Connecticut right now, one of the things you're going to face is that a lot of your workforce is going to struggle to be able to move here because, in fact, housing is so expensive.
This ironically connects to another thing that connects to this whole issue. Hamden just picked up a modular housing company, Full Stack Modular, a couple of years ago. One of its factories is in our town, and that factory could churn out lots of low-cost housing units. And I would love to see low-cost housing units. I'd like to see a lot of low-cost housing units go up because there's a great deal of wasted real estate that's been sitting empty, car dealerships, retail outlets, manufacturing sites, all kinds of places, schools that are empty. And meanwhile,
movie theaters.
movie theaters. That's right.
Yeah,
All those movie
multiplexes.
theaters.
You could do a lot of apartments in a multiplex. No, I think your point is a good one. That and I think you're pointing to a lot of problems that we've sort of caused and aren't necessarily willing to solve. And of course, the difficulty is that that nobody wants. I mean, the NIMBY thing is kind of expanded into not just my backyard, but my entire town. No, you cannot build that in my entire town.
It's also immigration.
Yeah.
It's also the key to our not solving immigration. Our great strength as a nation is the fact that everybody wants to come here.
Yep.
That's why we stay ahead of China and Russia and these places, because nobody wants to move into China except from North Korea.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to move here, including lots of Chinese.
Yep.
But the people, we cannot get together and actually talk and settle as a political entity on what we want our immigration policy to be. I mean, this community I'm living in around New Haven was planned very strictly by those Puritans in 1638. They would set exactly where you could build a house and exactly what you could wear when you went outside of that house. If you wore clothing that was too showy for your social status, they'd call you up in court at the town meeting about it and fine you for luxury or for being too obscene in your clothing if you wore slashed trousers or something like this. And if your wife moved out of your bed, it happened to the Governor Eaton in New Haven. His wife left his bed because she no longer agreed with the people about communion at the church, and she stopped taking communion. And people got up at the town meeting and criticized him for it.
Okay, fascinating though this is, and it really is genuinely fascinating, Petra. I'm going to, first of all, thank you for everything that you just added to this conversation. It's a lot, and you've actually given me some other new things to think about. But I want to just get over here because George is waiting, has been waiting for a little bit here. Our number, by the way, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. George, you're on the air.
Oh, very good, Colin. Thanks for taking me this afternoon. And my primary concern in calling is, well, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer about a year ago. And my only hope, with this type of cancer was with further research. As I said, there's no cure for it, and it is aggressive. And about a year ago, I heard about the CDC being pared back, and also research facilities being defunded. What they do, so that kind of takes away a little bit of the hope I had of a miracle. And I also see today that I have a family member that is involved in cancer research, and they're aggressively laying off many of these scientists. It really is a terrible situation for a select group, and it seems like I never hear anyone really talking about it or mentioning or being aware of it or making a fuss in any way about it. And that's basically the reason I called you this afternoon.
Well, first of all, George, I want to say I'm really sorry. This is happening. This is a phenomenon I'm unfortunately all too familiar with from what's happened to my family with cancer, and it's hard. It's just a hard thing you're going through, but you sound like you're going through it with quite a bit of dignity and. But I'm very sorry it's happening. I first of all want to say I agree with everything that you're saying, and really, it's hard to imagine anybody running a successful political campaign saying, "Oh, another thing I'm going to do if I get in office, I'm going to cut back on cancer research. We got too much cancer research. We got too much science going on in the biosciences." It just seems like the most bizarre thing, and I think it's coupled with a second problem, which is that I'm trying to think of an articulate way to put this, but I'll just give an example. Okay, so it sounds like you're keeping up on stuff. You may have known that there's some recent research that suggests a correlation between mRNA vaccines, just like the ones we've been using for COVID, and some kind of cancer prevention.
Yes.
And But the thing is, it's a correlation. So if you listen to a responsible scientist or clinician talk about it, if you listen to an Eric Topol or a Dr. Daniel Griffin or somebody talk about it, they're going to say that. They're going to say, okay, it's just a correlation right now. We don't even understand the mechanics of it, but it seems very statistically very strong. It's something we need to know a lot more about. Whereas the other side would just if they see any correlation at all, they just claim that it's a causation. Boom. Yeah. I mean, based on very little evidence, we think that vaccines cause autism or whatever it's going to be. And so in that sense, too, the playing field has become very unfair, and kind of unscientific people masquerading as scientific people can in fact grab a lot more headlines because they're willing to say things that are very exciting and create a lot of engagement, even if they're not true, if they're not very well researched. And some of that, I think, has therefore created a lot of power for people like RFK Jr. and Jay Bhattacharya, people like that, who have taken over institutions like the NIH and the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services and the National Science Foundation, and have been able to substitute their lack of interest in existing science and their conviction that it's all a big conspiracy to sell pharmaceuticals or whatever. And they want to substitute their kind of guesswork, their sort of tarted up guesswork for what was science, and I'm so sorry about what's happening to you, and I'm even sorrier. I mean, I have a family member who's 36, who's been struggling with cancer for quite some time, and these things. There's a whole cohort of people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s who could use help and should be able to get help. And we've slowed the process down. And I don't know whether it's any consolation or not, but one thing that's clearly happening, George, is that other countries are poaching our bioscientists and saying, all right, if they won't give you money to do stuff here, come to Norway, come to Japan, I don't know if Japan's doing it, but some of the Western European nations are definitely interested in grabbing our scientists and giving them an opportunity to work in an environment where they're not going to be obstructed or have grants snatched away for political reasons and stuff like that. So, I hope that you can, first of all, as you, I'm sure, have been told, stage 4 and it sounds like you've got something aggressive, and I'm sorry about that. Stage 4 doesn't mean what it used to mean. I mean, people live with stage 4 cancer for years and years and years in some cases. But I just hope that you can be comfortable and I'm just real sorry, man. I'm just sorry this is happening.
Okay. Yes, I do thank you for your thoughts, and what more can I say? But I do thank you for.
What, George?
On the air.
I think it's really important that you just told your story. I'm very serious about that. I think it's really important that you just told your story because, as you said, why aren't people screaming about this? Well, when people like you tell your story, that's powerful, and maybe it'll lead to a little bit more screaming. So thank you so much for being courageous enough and giving enough to share it. And I wish you nothing but the best outcomes that you can possibly have. We're going to grab a little break here. We're going to come back. We're going to finish up the show. Catherine's giving us a call right now, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR.
I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrating me home. Well, I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrating me home. Well, I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrating me home. Well, I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrate me home. I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrate me home. Well, I'm finally here, but I'm bound to roam, celebrate me home.
Support for Connecticut Public Radio comes from you, our members. and from the New Britain Museum of American Art, reminding you that memberships make a delightful gift for the holidays. Shop at nbmaa.org.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. Virginia's climate law demands 100% renewable energy by 2050. The Commonwealth is also known as the data center capital of the world. Can those ambitions coexist?
We'd like to have the added generation to support the data centers, but without all the health effects and environmental effects.
Next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon at 2.
I probably fall asleep to Gilmore Girls every night.
I watch it nonstop. It's kind of like background music at our house.
I think of it as a Prozac show.
It's like visiting an old friend. Generation Gilmore Girls, a podcast about the TV we love and how it shapes us. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Made possible with support from Panera Bread.
Support comes from Trinity Health of New England. Their team of primary care experts provide personalized care specific to you. Call 1-833-CU-NOW. That's 1-833, the letter C-U-Y-O-U, now. Or visit trinityhealthofne.org/PCP.
I know how much I lean on you, only you can see the changes that I've been through have left their mark on me. You've been as constant as a northern star, the brightest light that shines, and it's been you, woman, right down the line.
And we are back. It's time to thank Dylan Reyes, the maestro, the technical producer. He also picked that song the Jerry Rafferty cover that you're listening to right now. Who else do we have to thank? Well, we have to thank Robin Doyen Akert, our wonderful, beautiful, multi-talented boss who right now is screening phone calls for us. Does so many other things to make life good around here. And then there's the ruthless Lily Tyson, head of Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions, who's producing this episode, and is also the producer of Generation Gilmore, which, by the way, is what it should be called. It shouldn't be called Generation Gilmore Girls. And I think Rory would agree with me about that. Did you see how I just tried to give myself a little bit of credibility? I think Rory would say I was right. Because it's like Generation Gilmore, right? Generation Barney, Generation Gilmore, Generation Alpha, not Generation Alpha people. Generation Gilmore. But see, I didn't go to any of the meetings, so I have no right to complain. I mean, I wasn't invited to any of the meetings either, probably for this exact reason. All right, we got a bunch of calls here. We got to try to get through them. Here we go. We're going to start with Catherine. Catherine in New London, that is. Hi, Catherine. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. I haven't spoken with you in quite a while.
And I'm sick about it.
No. Well, as I told Robin, I've actually had a nice heart operation,
Ooh.
so I'm doing really well
good,
from
good.
modern medicine, the latest and greatest.
Yep.
But the reason I'm calling is I'm sitting around recuperating and listened to the entire arguments at the Supreme Court this morning. Very scary.
You should explain
They're
to people
talking-
what was being argued today.
Yes, they were arguing whether the president had the right to fire Rebecca Slaughter from, and I've forgotten which agency, but there were these independent agencies like the FTC, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And Rebecca Slaughter sued because he fired her. So they're discussing precedents that go back 200 years, Colin, that they're trying to overturn. And it looks as though they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think those kinds of cases, Trump tends to do better. There are enough people Obviously there's the two guys way on the far right there, but also Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. And then all you need is that Roberts vote. And that unitary executive idea that, in fact, presidents should be more powerful as opposed to being kept in check. They seem very interested in that. They seem very amenable to those arguments. So attempts to limit the power of Donald Trump with the Supreme Court tend not to do that well. I mean, there are some areas. It does seem as though if we ultimately really do get a ruling about tariffs, that might turn out to be one of the exceptions. But yeah, I mean, it is disturbing because the guardrails are way, way down. The House is not willing to be a check on Trump, and neither is the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Senate barely is. So it's not a good situation right now. All right, let's go with that in mind. Well, let's go to Mike in Woodbury, and hopefully we'll have time for Tom as well. Hi, Mike. You're on the air.
I was basically going to say the same thing as the last caller because this just hit the wires. And what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's reaction was that the president would be able to, quote, fire all the scientists and the doctors and the economists and the PhDs and replace them with loyalists and people who don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so the gentleman who called earlier about, the research, I mean, this is only going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. I mean, what would James Madison say to this? I mean, now we have a king now, apparently, like we did, back in the 1700s. And these are supposedly originalists, some of these people on the court. This doesn't seem very originalist to me. I think it's exactly the opposite of what the founders intended.
Yeah. And I think John Roberts is going to go down in history very differently than how it seemed he might go down in history prior to, let's say, January 20th, 2025. I mean, he was always going to be this kind of guy who was sort of an institutionalist, obviously leaned right, but didn't always lean right. Sometimes could see something like the Affordable Care Act and say, okay, maybe I've got to be the deciding vote on the other side for that. He's gone from that guy who cared more about the institution and about the way about just good practices than he did about anything else, to this hyper-partisan cuck, I mean, he just has given it all up. And he's just, it's so disappointing. I really thought he was the person who was going to, stand up to Trump, but he's just not going to do it. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling, and we will be back later this week for more shows.